All right, guys. Well, hi again. Welcome. This is session 3 of our 5-part workshop. Today, we're going to be discussing blog content strategy ideas for really SEO success. I'm hoping everybody that's on this training watched parts 1 and 2. If you're only catching the replay, so everybody who's watching this after it goes live, make sure you go back and watch parts 1 and 2, please. I'm going to be sending everybody the link for this training, the replay. I'll send that right in a couple minutes here. I'll shoot it over to you guys so you guys have the replay link, and you'll also find it in the video description. But yeah, part 4 will begin next week, same place, same time. And we have our whole team on here. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're here. We'll make this interactive. And I'm going to pass this straight on to Brandon to get started.
Super excited this week to jump into part 3. This is AI-generated blog and content strategy for SEO success. Last time we had talked about generating copy that's going to produce higher conversions on our homepage. And prior to that, we created the foundation for all of this that we're talking about here. We created a project in ChatGPT. We utilized our reviews, Google Analytics, and some product and business information. We put that all together and created an ideal customer profile. We looked at a value categorization using a very specific hierarchy, very specific prompts, and we came up with all of this that is helping us produce better messaging that's going to convert more. So I did mention last time, as we talked about in part 2, we talked about our homepage a lot. And I mentioned I wanted to touch on a tour page and a category page. We ran out of time, but let me go ahead and just share that really quickly here. So last time we talked a lot about the homepage. You'll remember we utilized AI and all of that foundation that we had put together, some very specific prompts that helped us craft each section. We went section by section for the homepage, and we crafted headlines, copy, and all of what you see here, or at least similar to it in that session. So if you missed that, go back, take a look at that. You're going to see how you can put together a really high-performing homepage that not only looks great, but also speaks to your ideal customer. We even use things here like this that were lines that our people had used in reviews, that our customers had used, which is pretty cool. I mean, you're really speaking their language when you do that. So I encourage you to go back and take a look at that if you haven't already. All of these designs are done by Resmark Web. They do a phenomenal job. Just a side note, this site is not live. So if you go looking for it and you're like, where's that cool design that I saw? It's not live yet. That's coming. We are actually in the process of building this out with Resmark Web, and I'm super excited about what they're doing for us here for Moab Adventure Center. It is looking really nice. This is an example of a category page. So all the principles we talked about last time, you would follow here too, right? The headlines, the copy, even the video. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but what's in a video, how does it resonate? The tour suggestions, the copy related to those, and even the reviews. Now we're talking about reviews not for on the company level, but on a very specific tour type level. So all of that is there. And then on the tour side, you do the same thing, right? That we have a structure for this, that we pull this together. We actually worked in conjunction with Kelsey Toner at Guest Focus. Really love their work on this. He does a lot of focus on tour pages, and together we worked on this and come up with some really, really nice layout and sections here that I think will really resonate and produce higher conversions here. So again, utilizing a structure like we talked about to come up with this on a very specific level. Cool thing is when you have those reviews in there, you can actually go in, create prompts to look for specific reviews for a certain tour, right? You would know what the hesitations and concerns are for that tour. You can provide, reviews that speak to that or other copy. You can come up with frequently asked questions for that. So anyways, just wanted to show you quickly kind of how that applies, not just the homepage, but really all the key pages on your site. Okay. So with that, let's jump into today's topic. We're talking AI-generated blog and content strategy for SEO success. All along the way, we've been talking about something that will never change in marketing, which is the right message, the right person at the right time. We talked in session 1 about the right person, built that foundation as we talked about. Session 2, we talked about the right message. We're going to continue that focus today. And we're going to do it with a focus towards blogging. So why does blogging matter? I don't know if everybody has a blog, but take a look at some of these stats. If you're a blogger, if you're blogging on your site, you could expect 97% more inbound link than those who don't blog. And we'll talk about how we get there today. You would get 13 times, you're 13 times more likely to receive a positive ROI on your marketing efforts. You generate 67% more leads than those without blogs. These are some pretty strong stats that are driven by data across hundreds or thousands of sites. And I think it really makes a difference. So if this isn't something you're doing, you're going to have the tools today to make it really, really easy for yourself. What blog formats work best? This is what we're going to focus on today. These 4, I think from a travel perspective, these are phenomenal. We're going to talk about long form guides. These are things like the ultimate guide to rafting the Colorado River, the insider's guide to Moab, Utah, like something that's just very large and complete with all of that type of information. We're going to talk about listicles. These are the top 10 hikes in Arches National Park, or top 5 X, Y, or Z. That you see them all the time. We'll talk about how they work and why they work. We're going to talk about news and seasonal updates. These are things like traveling to your destination in the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter, all of those kinds of things. People search for that specifically. So we're going to talk about how to do that. News would be things that are changing right now in 2025, 2026, what's happening, and you're really relevant and timely. Informative posts are super powerful. This is where we're going to take a question that people are asking continuously online. We're going to devote an entire blog to that question. So let's talk about each one of these really quickly, and then we're going to jump into our prompts. All right, long form guides. So what are we talking about when we say long form guides? We're talking about 2,000 words or more. We're talking about you're getting 3 times more organic traffic than shorter posts because of the depth of these things. We're talking about getting 4 times more social shares, 3.5 times more backlinks. These things will keep your people on the page longer. Listicles, they are huge engagement boosters. People love to skim through lists. Our brains just work that way. We're like, oh, I got to get to the end of this, right? Once we start the countdown, we've got to see what's at the bottom. We just released a video for Moab Adventure Center that I did that was 15, the top 15 things to do. And it has one of the best engagement rates we've had on a video because people are watching it. They want to see what number 1 is, right? Our brains want to get to the end. A/B tests show that you get 70% more clicks when you add a number to the title. So instead of best Moab hikes, 7 best Moab hikes. People like that. Our brains love it. So that's what we're talking about here. News and seasonal updates. These are great for Google's freshness update, right? They want fresh content. And we'll talk about how to come back and update your posts as well. So if I created a Moab Events 2025, once 2025 passes, that's old content, right? But I can go back and refresh that, change the title, change the heading, and update the content to be 2026. And we should do that regularly. These are great for, seasonal promotions as well, around how the change of seasons and so forth. All right, the last one is informative posts. So here I'm talking about taking something like, when is the best time to visit Arches National Park? It's that one question, and devoting an entire post to it, breaking it down, and really getting into it. Google loves this from a trust and authority perspective, but I think they are also going to be key to our future in terms of AI generated search results, right? If you guys we're using AI a ton in these workshops, but if you used it yourself personally, you probably find yourself asking much more conversational type questions, right? And you expect a conversational type answer. Blogs work really well for that. You can stick that whole question in the page title, in the header, and answer it succinctly, and then dive into the details. And that's going to be really, really great content. One overarching principle we don't want to forget as we do this, from our friend Neil Patel, the best content isn't just informative, it leads people to take action. And I do want to remind everyone is that as we go through this, we are still in the business of selling tours, right? So while it's helpful to provide all this information in a blog, we don't want to be overly, promoting in these blogs in terms of like constantly just pushing our tours, but there is a balance and we need to keep that in the back of our minds so that people are taking action. They're either digging into deeper content, learning more, thinking about our tours. It's kind of driving them towards that. Okay, so today we are going to actually design a content calendar. We're going to create 52 blog post ideas, whether you want to use that for 52 months and have a serious amount of content created for years, or whether you want to post every single week. You'll have 52 really great ideas at the end of this. We're going to take one of those. We're going to use this formula to generate key copy for your post. And then we're going to talk about how to review and refine it. And I'm going to give you some additional examples, some tips that I've seen that have produced better content. A framework I like to apply to these is actually from Julia McCoy. She has a service called Content at Scale. She does a really great job in terms of blogging. And she created this acronym called CRAFT. She talks about C is for cut the fluff. So after you've generated this, like look through it. I want to just say this up front. Like don't ever just go, you generated this, you copy and paste it right into your blog. AI is getting better and better, but it needs a human touch, right? And sometimes you go through and you go, that's not really important to my readers, right? We got to cut the fluff. You're going to review it, edit it, optimize it. You're going to add images, visuals, media. These are not going to come right out with all your images just placed, right? You are going to have to go in and put some images into this. We'll talk about that. You want to fact check, right? Stuff can be wrong, so don't always trust it. You got to go in and actually make sure it's right. You want to be the authority. You want it to be accurate. And then T is for trust building, personal story, tone, links, crafting that. But the amount of time we would have taken to do this in the past compared to what we can do today is mind-blowingly different. So we're going to jump into that and see that. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing here. We are going to jump into our prompts. I'm going to actually grab this here and we'll copy this link. I'm going to push this out here in the chat real quick. Sorry, I meant to send this to you, Nikki, earlier, but that's okay. Everybody's going to see it pop up here. So you can jump in and you'll be inside this document. Everybody's popping in. I see you. Oh, the anonymous elephant and anonymous giraffe, you're there. All right. So you see my screen divided. On the left, I have our project. Everybody should have a project that we created in session 1. We've been creating some content and things with that as we went. We created our homepage content last time. And now we're going to start working through some of these other prompts. One thing I do want to point out in the beginning, again, we don't have time with this. I wish we did. We need another 5 sessions to talk about SEO. Our focus with this, we're going to learn about creating content, but we don't have time to really pull in all of the SEO layers that we would want into this to properly do the research, to do competitive analysis, to figure out where your biggest opportunities are. Again, that's a service that's offered by Resmark Web. If you want to, there's a little video from Nikki. She did a great job here, and you can go to Services SEO. You can learn a little bit more about what is offered there, but that is a great thing to layer on top of this. And I'll show you where you would do it in the process if you already have like all your keyword targets dialed in and you know exactly what you're doing. You're just trying to achieve results. Then we'll talk about that too. Okay, so here we are. Let's get started. We've got our document over here. The first thing we're going to do is this master guiding prompt. So this is similar to what we've done before. I don't want to just do everything all at once. I'm going to do this in pieces because it allows ChatGPT or other AI platforms to spend a little more time with the instructions we're giving it. We get better results, we get a little more depth, and it's a great way to go about it. So my context with this one is that we're creating a 52-week blog calendar for our company, and it knows what your company is because you're here inside the project, to increase organic traffic, customer engagement, and bookings. I've told it in this case, it still has our instructions over here that it's acting as an expert marketer and SEO, and it's using this, Eugene Schwartz style copywriting methods and principles that we've talked about and we've been using all along. So that's still underlying this. I've added this extra little piece of context that I'm asking it to act as an experiencing marketing strategist and content specialist as it looks at this. So we are going to put this master guiding prompt in first. We're giving it a few principles and guidelines that it's going to utilize. So we're going to plug this in, and it shouldn't create these because you're telling it that you're now going to provide instructions for 4 different categories of posts that you want to create. So hopefully yours did just that. Great. Please provide the 4 categories you'd like to create for the 52-week blog content calendar. Okay, so if you scroll down the page, I'm on page 2 now, you'll see we've divided these into the 4 categories that we just talked about on the slides. And we could develop a whole process of all 52 weeks. It might do okay with it, but I found better results going through this in section by section. So first we're going to do long form, then we're going to do listicles, then we're going to do seasonal updates. I've purposely left out news from this because it's a little more challenging, and each of our areas are a little bit different. You know what's happening in your area with news and stuff. So what you can use these principles to apply that. We're going to just talk about seasonal. So this is a little more evergreen, right? Spring, a post about springtime in your area or fall or whatever is probably applicable next year and for 10 years from now. But those news updates are important. We're not going to generate those in this session though. And then the last one we'll talk about is the FAQ-based posts. So let's go ahead and grab our first one. I don't need to grab the whole prompt 1 thing. We can just say, grab everything below it. And we'll paste it in here. It's like Christmas morning when you do this, isn't it? Kind of fun. Okay. So good. It recognized that we're in this project. Mine are all related to Moab. Hopefully yours are all related to oh, nice. And it divided it kind of in 2 different categories in my case. I don't know if it's doing the same thing for you, but I like these. The ultimate guide to Moab adventures, everything to know you need to know before you go, how to plan the perfect Moab adventure, essential Moab packing list, best time to visit, Moab on a budget, complete guide to rafting the Colorado River in Moab. These are great. So it gave me 15, divided them in this case into, different categories. Now, this is a point where you could provide some feedback. If you're looking at this, and if I'm looking at mine saying, I don't really want to focus on family. In our case, we do. It probably used our ideal customer profile. Family's a big focus for us. But if it did something like that, that's kind of out there, you're like, that's not really my core audience here. For some reason, it got a little bit confused on that. Just guide it. You can put something in there and say, hey, let's come up with some different ideas for 11 through 15. Perhaps focus on X, and you can give it a different idea. But ideally, you've got some really great ideas here. And again, that's what they are, ideas. Now, if I were plugging in an SEO focus, here's what I would have done. I would have done all of the research on my keywords. I would be careful not to focus on keywords that I already have a core page for. For example, I already have a page that focuses on Moab rafting. Okay. I have a page that focuses on Arches National Park. I have an entire section of our site that focuses on the park. So I don't really want to create a blog that's focused on the exact same keyword. Now, if I did, best times to visit Arches, and that was not in my other section, that might be a great blog, and then I could link back to the main Arches National Park section of my site. If I had something that was everything you need to know about packing for your adventure, your Colorado River adventure from Moab, Utah, and I didn't have that on my other page, that's a great complement to it. So we don't want to compete with our existing pages. We want to complement them, right? And get additional keywords that we can focus on. So again, that would be an entirely separate course, but if you were doing that, I would actually put into my project, these are the list of keywords that I want to focus on as I do this. And then it could be referencing that and drawing from it as it's creating these ideas. Because as it is right now, these are great ideas, but they're not necessarily focused on SEO. And if I'm not focused on SEO with this, then I might get lucky, but I might also be wasting my time a little bit because you want search volume. I want to write about things that people care about, that they're actually searching for. If I'm not doing that, how are they ever going to find it? Okay, next one. Let's do prompt 2. This one is for listicles. So let's plug this in and see what we get. Okay. Looks like it might divide me into 5 categories again. Yep. Which is fine. It's kind of, I've got a little bit of seasonal stuff here, which might be fine. Might have some overlap with that other section. But I'd come back and refine that a little bit. So love this. 7 epic Moab adventures you can't miss. 10 must-try Moab tours for first-time visitors. And hidden gems for returning travelers. Very cool. 5 best ways to experience Arches National Park. 12 jaw-dropping Moab experiences that will leave you speechless. Very cool. The 9 most thrilling outdoor activities in Moab for adventure seekers. Love it. Some specific things that apply to our audience again. Hopefully you're seeing that. For couples, love that. That was in our ideal customer profile. We have couples, we have families. The multi-activity combo, I told it that was a focus, so it recognized that. I love it. Corporate retreats, we have some reviews that talk about that. So hopefully you're seeing some really good results on your side. These are super cool. I'm really excited about them. Okay, let's do prompt 3. This one is for seasonal updates. So if you feel like you're plugging something like this in and it may not have enough background to figure this out, you could find a source that has a lot of great information and provide it that before you do this, or in conjunction with the post. I'll show you how I did that with something related to the Grand Canyon and what we got as results here in a little bit. Okay. I like it. So this is exactly what we wanted to. Spring in Moab. Now so it did a couple listicles in here too, which I'm okay with. They generally perform even better anyways. Spring in Moab, 7 must-see blooming landscapes, best outdoor adventures. Summer adventure alert. It's top 10 Moab tours before they sell out. This one is safety tips for heat, hydration, and outdoor prep. I like it. Moab's 2025 festival and event calendar. Key dates and best activities for visitors. Really awesome. Okay, so you got your 10 ideas that are related to seasonal updates. Let's do our last one, and then we're going to jump into one of these. We'll just pick one at random and see how it does. This last one is FAQ related. So let's go ahead and generate this. Okay. Now, there are some tools you can utilize. There's one called Answer the Public. You can sign up for a free trial of that, or you can actually access it free and you get 3 queries per day, I believe. It's owned by Ubersuggest. That is a pretty cool tool to kind of figure out what questions people are asking about your destination. Another thing that you can do is look at some of the questions that are being asked. If I do a search for Moab, Utah, for example, the people also ask section of Google has some great things that people are searching for, right? Is there anything to do? Is there anything to do? Yes, there are lots of things to do. What is the best month to visit Moab? Why is Moab so expensive? I mean, these are questions that are out there or they would not be putting them here, right? Where is Moab? So you could look at some of your destinations, some of your activities. You could plug those in and get similar results there. So there's a couple of tools. There's also keyword tools that I could type that into. I love to use tools like Href, SEMrush. They all have ways that you can type in a keyword and see variations and long tail questions and so forth that people are asking. So again, had I fed this with the SEO content, I'd be getting some things that are actually driven by search volume, which is really what I want here. But I think it's done an okay job coming up with some of these. There's that safety question again. We talked about that last week. I would probably not devote a whole blog to writing about safety of trips. So I'd scratch that because we know there's inherent risk in our activities and we don't want to necessarily or explicitly call them safe in any of our content. So again, be aware of that as you go through this. Safety is always a concern for people, and we have to address it in slightly different ways. Okay, I like this. So behind all of, or below all of these in the document, you are going to see some prompts. You're going to actually see 4 more prompts, and these are a little bit longer. These are designed to create your post content. So let's go up and pick one of these. I think I want to do one of our listicles because I really like these things. Here's our listicle section. So let's try, and I'm doing this live. I have not yet tried one of these with this, so we'll see what we get, which is what you're doing too. So I kind of wanted to do it at the same time. So if you're discovering what I'm discovering, we can walk through it together and say, okay, how do we deal with this problem? Let's see. This one's interesting. 8 best times to visit Moab. There's only really 4 seasons, but I'd be curious what it would do with that. Let's do 10 essential things to do in Moab if you only have a weekend. I know things to do search is really popular, and maybe the caveat of if you only have a weekend is a great spin on this that we could link to from our other page. So I'm going to keep this in mind right here. In fact, maybe I'll just copy it and I'm going to come down. I'm going to skip the long form content because that's not what we're doing here. We're going to come down to, we'll probably only have time to do one of these, but I'm going to come down below the yellow box on page 7 in the document. You're going to see the listicle prompt generation. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to try to remember 10 essential things to do in Moab if you only have a weekend. And we're going to copy this section right here. I don't want the review and refine box. I just want down to it. Okay. So I've got everything from just below that. And I'm actually going to come over here because we've done a lot in this already and we might get a little deep in this one. I'm actually going to come back to my high level and I'm going to create a new chat. So paste, but then come up here and I'm going to do top 10 things to do in Moab if you only have a weekend. Okay. And in this case, again, this is where I would do my research. I'm going to, just as an example, I'm going to type in things to do in Moab. I know I already have a page that focuses on that on our core website, but I'd have to go and do some research, figure out what variations of this might make sense for this post so that I'm targeting something that's not competing but complementing, like we talked about, right? Okay, so I have my title, my keyword focus in there. It's pasted all of this, and we're going to go ahead and generate. All right, I saw that it was searching my project files. I always like to see that. Okay, this is going to take a second to generate because I have to do quite a bit, but we can see the content that's starting to come through in this. So there's my headline, top 10 things to do in Moab if you only have a weekend. And it's talking about absolute best things to do. So I actually told it in here to utilize that keyword. within the first couple of sentences. It's done that. It's created my hook right there. There's my 1 to 3 sentences. Again, if I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it's not resonating with me, I don't think it resonates with my ideal customer, we'll use the review and refine section to kind of fix that and get some other options for us. But I kind of like that. It's given me a table of contents here. This piece that you do see in here, this table of contents, is a really big deal for SEO. When Google looks at this page, it can quickly see the structure of it from the top. And then what these become are anchor links. So I click this and I jump to Arches. I click this, I jump to the Hummer Safari. And that works really, really well, both from a user experience that, like if I'm like, oh, mountain biking, yeah, I want to read about that. I know what I'm going to get. It's just great. Kind of follows that concept when you're public speaking to, tell people what you're going to tell them what you told them, right? And so that concept applies here in our writing and really resonates with search engines and for so many other reasons. So I like this. This is all coming from what I told it to do in each listicle. Now, if you want to change this format, this is one suggestion, right? And I think it works really well. But there are ways to tweak this. So the reason this is focused like it is with a local insider tip, has a little CTA at the bottom, all of that, is because that's the exact format I told it to follow over here. So we're seeing that. And it's following it. I could tell it to do this again without the icons if I want to copy and paste this a little bit better. It gets overzealous with icons unless you tell it not to, at least in my world. And I don't necessarily want to put those on my website. So I would probably remove them, or you can remove them while you're editing. Canyonlands National Park, vast, stunning, underrated, must-see stops. I love it. One thing that I might do as I'm looking at this, just as we review and refine, I'm going to throw out a couple of ideas. So when it's suggesting stops inside a location, we want this to be as useful as possible. What I always think about is, will someone have to leave my page to find out more information on this? And if the answer is yes, what can I put in the page so they don't have to leave? So I might think, okay, you're telling me to stop at Mesa Arch, Grand Viewpoint, and the Schaefer Trail Overlook. How far are these and how much time should I spend at each one? I might ask it to include that and just rewrite it, but include that detail because I think that's helpful. Okay, I like this. Now, of course, each one of these, you can see below here, I've got visual content optimization. I should be putting an image every 75 to 200 words in my blog. It will keep people engaged. The data has shown that if you do that, people will kind of keep moving through the content. If you have too long of a block of words, they tend to lose interest and leave. So lots of really great imagery, and definitely worth an investment on your side to get great imagery so that you can do this. I like all of these. These are really good. So there's my 10. It's plugged a few things in that are not tours, which I like, because I think having a little balance between like sell through the whole thing versus, just go see a place, I think is good. This one's got a lot of booking in it. I might even ask it to weave in 5 more ideas that are not tours. So let's come down to
quick question, Brandon, kind of what you're talking about now. We had a question come through. So all the recommendations lists, all the types of blogs, all point just to what the company offers and nothing and nobody else. Although I know that I have an answer for this, I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, so that's where I was just mentioning. I see that it's kind of going into guided experiences on each one of these. I do think it's nice to weave in to our posts whenever possible something that is not something we're selling, something that they can do. So 10 was a random number on this one. Why not make it 15, right? I like all 10, they're in there. But what if I want to sprinkle in 5 additional details that are not services that I provide? So I'm going to do that right now, and we'll plug that in there. Maybe there are services from other companies, and I can do that. Maybe they're just do-it-yourself kind of activities. Maybe I want a combination of 3 do-it-yourself and 2 from another entity, so that I'm, somebody that hopefully doesn't compete with me quite as much. Like I'm not going to offer someone else's rafting tour when we offer that, but something that I don't offer, I might do. Nikki, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when you do something like that as well, you're adding trust to that person. So they don't just think, you're just selling, selling, selling. So adding that additional value, even if it's something you're not offering, so I agree with that.
Yeah. So before we get into what I have down here, I do want it to check the length. I want it to proofread, check facts, check links, all of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that yet though, because I want to manipulate the content a little bit. So I like to compliment the AI, it's like, be nice to it and it'll be nice to you is how I feel. So, so I talk to it kind of like a human, and I think it actually has been proven that it will incorporate some of your tone and inflection with the way you talk to it. It will start to sort of emulate that over time too. So anyways, I like to talk to it like I'd talk to, my assistant who's helping me craft this. So I'll say, this is great. And I'll just say, can we incorporate 5 more ideas? I'd like these to be things to do that don't, well, maybe I won't say don't cost any money. That maybe visitors can do on their own, or that our other services provided by other companies that Moab Adventure Center does not provide. And then also, when we mention stops in a certain location, can you provide the recommended amount of time it would take to visit those locations? And if they require a hike, how far? Maybe I'll say hike or walk. Okay, so just a couple of things I noticed, right? I'm doing this pretty quickly, but you get the idea. You can come in and let's see if we can just refine this a little bit. Okay, it interpreted what I said really well. Now it's changed it to 15, so that's great. I don't know how you're going to pack 15 things to do in a weekend though, but we might want to think about that. And maybe even think maybe I even come back and edit this a bit and change the number down again, and remove some of our longer tours, like a full day tour. Maybe I'm focused on half day, 2 hour, things that are short, and I refine this a little bit further. Okay. Now it's put new on each one of these. I don't think I would actually put that in my post because that's just telling me it's new to what we did here. Drive the La Salle Mountain Loop, love it. Hike to Corona Arch, that is a beautiful hike. Visit Hole in the Rock, dinosaur tracks and petroglyphs. Go paddleboarding on Ken's Lake. Cool, that's probably offered by somebody who rents paddleboards. We don't do that, so I love that. Off Highway 29, 20 minutes from Moab. Time needed, 1 to 2 hours, moderate, okay, I like it. So, and now it's providing some of those details that I wanted to make it a little bit more useful. I might come back a third time and say, let's provide links to Google Map links to the trailhead, for example. Again, how do I make this super, super useful? So people looking at it go, oh my gosh, I love this page. I can just bookmark, save this thing, and I'm coming back to it, and it's got my whole weekend planned for me, and I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't even have to do another search because it's got even all the links for everything that I need, right? So you get the idea. We could kind of continue to refine as we go. I'll let it finish our last one, then we'll do kind of our verification prompt over here that we're talking about. Love this. Again, I would want to know where this is. They're talking about the Moab Giants Dinosaur Park. I know where that is. It's easy for me to see, but they may not. So again, let's send them right to it. Maybe I could even have a link out to it. That one of our, one of the questions that was asked, should I link to this? Yeah. That's something we also sell tickets for, so I might consider linking to that as well. I might look at this and go, okay, that's cool, but how many people are going to show up with a paddleboard? It says rent kayaks or paddleboards in Moab, but who would I rent them through? So I might ask it to do that. So just think through each one of these. But again, like the concept of putting this together is so much faster than me having to start with a blank slate, right? Now I can work through this and just refine these things, but continue to think, how do I make it useful? How do I allow people to read this and feel so grateful that they landed on this post? Because when they do, everything else is going to fall into place. People are going to spend more time on it. As a result, it's going to rank better, and you can continue to, it'll get picked up more. It's going to get shared more. That's going to boost rankings. Like all of these things cascade on themselves. So take the time to make it useful. All right, I'm going to do a quick check on this. So I'm just going to copy this over. This is just an example. Again, you've seen how we've kind of been manipulating this a little bit, but I'm going to add one thing in since I know it's going to maybe give me a bit of a revision here. I'm just going to say ensure that we have links to other services when they are recommended. And let's also make sure that any locations where someone would have to drive, that we insert a Google Maps link to the destination. Okay. Maybe I'll say to make it easy for our visitors to get to the destination. All right. So you can manipulate that a little bit based on what you're seeing, and we run it. It's doing word counts and so forth right now, I assume. Fact checking. I think it's always good when you got a big piece of content like this to don't just take it at face value the first time. I mean, have it review, ask how it might be improved. You could go out and even say, are there any best practices with listicles that we're missing in this post? And just ask that. And then it returns back, oh, there's 5 things that you might want to consider. And if you like what you're telling us to consider, say, great. Can we incorporate those into the post? And then go back and it will just continue to improve itself. So the current word count was 330, significantly below the 1,500 to 2,500 word target. So we'll see if we like what we get here, because that was quite different. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule that you get to that 1,500 level minimum, but research has shown that a lot of these longer posts do perform better. So if you can get there without it sounding like you put too much fluff into it, then that may be good. Again, where is the useful content? I'm already seeing things that we're missing from this, like driving directions and stuff like that. So all that's going to add more, more meat to my post. So Okay, look at this. Now it's divided it into day one and day two. Interesting. That could still work as an interesting way to divide up the table of contents. Probably a little more useful, honestly. Maybe it got that from me asking it to check the EEAT principles, to say, is this really an expert opinion? Can I trust it? Are they speaking with authority? Some of those things come through that way. And then I might, reformat and rephrase this a little bit as I go through it. But again, I've got a great working balance to create this post. And then I could plug in my imagery. I think it probably could have done just a very short description on some of these versus all bullet points. But I might ask it to come back and do that. And once we get the word count closer to where we want, to include a short description with each one of these if it's not doing it. It did down here a little bit. Maybe it started doing it after the first one there. Okay. As we're going, waiting for this to generate, we're coming up to the top of the hour. What questions do we have so far? Are there any specific questions about things you're seeing as you generate your own posts? Anything that's come through, Nikki, that we should discuss?
Nothing's come through, but feel free to take yourself off mute. I just wanted to say something too, real quick. I mean, we see a lot of tour operators, and I just see people on LinkedIn, not even in the industry. A lot of people are writing, whether it's social media posts or blog content, and they are just copying and pasting their first iteration when they're asking AI. So going through this process of constantly, changing it and then using it, to publish is so important. It's really going to set you apart from those people who are just copying and pasting, because trust me, a lot of people are just copying and pasting their first iteration. It's crazy.
Right.
Does anybody have
So,
questions? Sorry, Brandon.
oh no, I'll just mention this. So you guys post any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll answer them here in our last few minutes. But I did want to show you an example of something that I did. So we actually had some cancellations on some early trips down in the Grand Canyon. So we had some openings in April. And it was pretty last minute and fairly unusual, actually, that we have space there. And so we really needed to get the word out, because a lot of people think these things book, a couple of years in advance, which they do. But now we have some last minute space available, and we're talking about, these trips in the spring. But there are a lot of nuances to these multi-day, 6, 7, 3 and 4 day Grand Canyon trips. And I didn't want generic information. I wanted it to be related to Western River Expeditions and exactly what we're offering. So what I did is I went in and I did a prompt specifically to create several ideas. So I'm kind of backing up to this part here, just to show you, kind of an idea that's along the same lines but different. I wanted ideas for blog posts and emails, and we'll utilize all of this stuff across all marketing, right? Once you create a post, you can create an email and wrap it around a little teaser that links to your blog post. But in this case, I wanted to generate content that was specific to promoting April trips. So that's what I told it. And I got these titles, and I could see that if I didn't provide more information to ChatGPT, it was going to fail at really creating what I wanted it to. So I did something really, really simple. I popped in here. We have this massive page about Grand Canyon rafting trips. It has information in general. It has very specific trip information, how long things are, minimum ages, all of that. It has comparisons between the 3 and 4 day trip, the 6 and 7 day trip. It has frequently asked questions that span the bottom of this page. Like, it had a ton of details. So I literally it took me 30 seconds. I copied this entire page. I just went like this, right up to the top. And I just hit Command C, and I pasted that into the prompt without doing anything else. And then I had it generate these posts. I had it say, I want to utilize this background information as we generate these. And it said, okay, great. I can do that. Let's create your first post. Okay. Um, and then I started creating, that was a unique one, but I did 20 breathtaking wonders you can't miss this April while rafting the Grand Canyon. Um, that was one of the ideas. And the cool thing is, it utilized all of this, rafting the lower third of the canyon on Western's 3-day or 4-day Grand Canyon expedition is the perfect introduction to these desert marvels. So it's using all of that information that I fed it, because sometimes the product information that we might put in our project is pretty superficial, right? So if you've got deeper information on one of your pages and you want to get into the nuts and bolts of something and really make sure it's accurate, just provide that. If you don't have that information on your site, then you can provide it, manually. But
Good question. Could you have just given it the URL rather than copying and pasting?
you could. It's gotten a lot better at that, but you could try it both ways. Honestly, I think feeding a URL today probably works a lot better than it did not too long ago. So you could do that. You could try to feed it. I try to get kind of specific though, because you could give it a domain, but I'm not sure if it'll get into exactly what I want it to. We've got like 1,500 pages on this site. I'm not sure it's going to find the one that I want.
I've
So
noticed that myself. Yeah.
yeah. But the cool thing is it pulled all of this stuff. It was like remote helicopter access. Our J-rig rafts were on there. The historic Barton Ranch stay. Like all of these things are part of that content, which I loved. 10 reasons to choose Western River Expeditions for the ultimate spring getaway. These are a little bit more salesy, right? But we utilize these for emails. We sent out emails titled this way, let them know there was availability. Here's the top 10 reasons you should do this. Here's 20 reasons you should go, in April, rafting the Grand Canyon. And then we actually created social posts around this, promoted the same content, linked to the blog from the social post. So you can see how all this stuff kind of starts to fit together. And I can even take one of these and then craft, a quick little one-liner that I might put on a social post or a little video script or something like that I could draft using this. This top one was fun. This Jomo one, we actually posted this and put it out. We did a version of it in a press release, and the next day got a call from ABC 10 in California, and they said, hey, we want to have you on our show this Thursday talking about this idea of the joy of missing out and kind of this digital detox that we all need. And so I was able to jump on a live show and did a very mediocre job at promoting this idea, but really cool exposure because we're constantly trying to put this information out there. So anyways, I hope this has been helpful as we've gone through this. Again, remember the structure that we talked about to kind of go through. You can see how we did this a little bit today, kind of on the surface, but walking through this, reviewing, edit, optimizing. If we would have taken this a step further and actually posted it on our page, obviously we're going to add the visuals. We're definitely going to fact check on a human level as well. And we're going to come back through it and we're going to change some of the wording a little bit too. I don't ever want to just use like straight up copy paste. Like Nikki said, we need to go in and kind of do that a little bit. So again, from an SEO perspective, we didn't cover it today, but if you want to jump into that or figure out what's offered on the ResMark website, either from a design standpoint or SEO, happy to help with that. So that concludes part 3 of what we're talking about today. Part 4, next session, we are going to be talking about AI-driven email marketing. So we'll talk about how to weave some of these things in that we've already talked about today. We're also going to talk about how to create lead nurturing sequences and some other things that are going to be really, really effective in your marketing, how to make it all a lot easier and more effective using AI.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for joining, and we will see you next week. Okay. Bye, everybody. I'll get the replay
Thanks,
up in a
everybody.
little bit. Have a good one. Bye, guys.